right, as we begin tonight, we're going to start down in verse 27, where we left off with the last time. That really is the beginning of the section we're in. But I want us to note now that what he is telling them is, "For I say unto you that except your righteousness." Now, that's the righteousness of the people that he's talking to. "Except your righteousness now shall exceed the righteousness of the scribes and the Pharisees." Now, the righteousness of the scribes and the Pharisees would be the way they lived according to the teachings of the rabbis, the tradition of the rabbis. So he's telling them, now, you're going to have to be more righteous than what they are. So he's going to be comparing this in here. Now he said, unless your righteousness exceeds that which is practiced and taught by these people right here, you're not even going to get into the kingdom of heaven. So he's telling them the kind of people that they need to be in order to get into the kingdom of heaven. Now, he's going to go back and he's going to teach and tell them, now here is what you have to do. You have to do exactly what God told you to do through the law of Moses. He said, whosoever breaks the least of these commandments and teaches people shall be called least in the kingdom of heaven. So I see what Jesus is doing is taking the Jews, that generation of Jews that are following the teachings of the rabbis, and telling them, now you're going to have to change your ways. You're going to change your ways. You're going to have to be a different kind of people here. Now, he's going to compare the way they were living then under these teachings of the rabbi with the life that they must live in order to get into the kingdom of heaven. So here's the kind of people now that you need to be. All right, now, as he starts out here on this Sermon on the Mount, we already talked about this as we start. In Matthew 5:21, he started out by saying, "Ye have heard that it was said of them of old times, Thou shalt not kill. Whosoever shall kill shall be in danger of the judgment." Now, we talked about that last week. They had a judgment. They had a council. But Jesus said, "I say unto you." Now then, what he says up there, and I'm not going to go into this in detail because we want to try to cover as much other material as what we can, but he said that would include being angry. In other words, you're not even to get angry. You're not to say disrespectful things to people in there, or you're going to be in violation of all of that. We find that we're taught the same thing in the gospel in 1 John 3:15. If you hate your brother, what does he say you are? You are a murderer. Now, what he means by that is that hatred always comes before murder. You don't just get out of bed and say, I think I'll murder somebody today. But that hatred comes in, and then it is a precursor to this murder in here. Now, the next thing here then he tells them is that ye have heard that it was said, Thou shalt not commit adultery. Then he is going to tell them now something else. But I say unto you, and then what does he say? That everyone that looketh on a woman to lust after hath committed adultery with her already in his heart. Now, somebody was saying that you can do whatever you want to do up to the committing adultery, but you can't commit adultery. So Jesus is saying, now I'm telling you that it becomes a sin before you ever get to the physical act of adultery. Because when it is in your mind, when your mind is set on it, and that lust is there, then you have actually committed the act in your heart. And I illustrated it with stealing last week. That I look at a pile of money, I can say, boy, that's what I'd like to have. I need that pile of money. But if I start making plans to steal it, if I start making plans to get it, then I've crossed the line. And even if something interrupts me and I can't get it, I'm guilty of stealing in my heart. See? And so this is the thing here that he's telling us about it in this. Now, I think that I clicked it right here just a little bit too soon on this. He's talking here now about the committing adultery in his heart. Now then, let's go ahead and see what else he says in here. In verse 29, he's going to talk about the extent you should go to make sure that you don't sin. Now, I suppose that people in those days said the same thing they'd say today, and they'd say, there are just some temptations that are too great. There are just some temptations that you can't you can't get over. There are some that your body just responds to, and there's no way you can stop it. And so they try to use these things as excuses. Now look what he says. He said, if thy right eye cause thee to stumble, pluck it out, and cast it from thee. For it is profitable for thee that one of thy members should perish, and not thy whole body be cast into hell. He says the same thing again. And if thy right hand cause thee to stumble, cut it off, and cast it from thee. For it is profitable that one of thy members should perish, and not thy whole body go into hell. So what he's saying is, I don't care what the cost is. I don't care how far you have to go. Whatever it is, you make sure you get rid of it and you don't sin. You do not use anything for an excuse. Now, there are people that take this literally, and there are some people who have cut off their hands, and they have plucked out their eyes. Not many, but I've read it in the news of at least a couple of cases where this has happened. That a person says, I'm going to change my life, and so he cuts off his hand that he used to steal some money. Well, let's stop and ask: would cutting off the physical hand stop you from stealing money? No, that wouldn't stop you, would it? Would plucking out your right eye stop you from lusting? No, that wouldn't stop you. So why is Jesus saying this? He's saying if that's what it takes. In other words, people have said this. You've heard the argument. I've heard the argument. There are some things that you just can't control. There are some things that it's just too much, that you can't be expected to do this. What Jesus is saying here is, I don't care what you have to do. If it's cutting off your hand, plucking out your eye, whatever it is, I want to tell you that it's worth it. Because whatever you have to do, whatever the cost is, it's better than spending that eternity in hell. So he's comparing the two. It would be better to go through life blind, go through life with your hands cut off, than it would be to go through life with these things, sinning, and then spend eternity in hell. So he's trying to show them whatever the cost is, you pay it, you stop it. Now, we could turn over to the New Testament passage in 1 Corinthians, the 10th chapter, and what do we learn that Paul said to those of us that says, I was just tempted above what I could stand? What did he say? Let no man say, see, that he's tempted above that which he can stand, because God will make the way of escape. He said there is nothing that will tempt you that is not common to people. You're never going to be in a place of temptation that other people haven't been in before you. And so just get this idea out of your mind, is what he's saying. Just remove it out of your mind. When you say that the temptation was so great, I had to succumb. There is no such thing as that. God says, I will provide the way of escape for every temptation. Well, this is what Jesus is saying. He's trying to get into the hearts. He's trying to get into your mind. He's trying to get you to change that heart to be the way that you ought to be. Now, in verse 31 then, he says this. You've heard it said of them of old, whosoever shall put away his wife, let him give her a writing of divorcement. Now, this is stated in Deuteronomy 24. That Deuteronomy says that if a man finds some unseemly thing in his wife and he's going to put her away, let him give her a writing of divorcement. Now, these people have taken this and they've twisted it around. And it comes out this way. It comes out, if you want to divorce your wife, what do you need to do to make everything right so you can divorce her and everything will be right? If you're going to divorce your wife, what do? Make sure you give her a writing. Make sure you give her the papers. Then everything is fine. So go ahead and divorce your wives for whatever reason you want, and just make sure that you give her the divorce papers, that you give her a writing, and then you will be justified. Now, Jesus is saying that is not true. That is not true in there. He goes ahead to say in here, in going back, he said, but I say unto you, then he tells the only reason that you can divorce your wife. He said, but I say unto you, that every one that putteth away his wife, saving for the cause of fornication, maketh her an adulteress. And whosoever shall marry her when she is put away, committeth adultery. So, what he's saying here is that if I put away my wife, except for fornication. Now, what's the definition of fornication? It's any unlawful sex act. Any unlawful sex act. Now, if I put away my wife, unless she has engaged in unlawful sex, see, with somebody else, she's gone out, she's committed adultery, unless she's done that, and I put her away, I'll make her an adulteress, and the guy that marries her will commit adultery. What he's saying is, you can't put your wife away and give her a writing of divorcement unless she has committed adultery. That's the only reason that it can be done. And so he puts a stop to this putting away. Now we'll see this at length when we get down to Matthew the 19th chapter. Matthew 19, the Jews are going to come up to him. They're going to ask a loaded question. There's going to be a give and take on this. They're going to quote Moses. They're going to say Moses said, and Jesus is going to talk about it. So we'll go into it at length when we get into Matthew the 19th chapter. But what Jesus is telling them is, for you people that want to use this excuse of the way that you think you read Moses, it's not going to work. Now, at that time, every generation has things that they argue about and they debate. In that generation, there was a great debate going on among the Jews about what Moses said when he said, if you find some unseemly thing or some uncleanliness in your wife and you put her away. They said, what is that unseemly thing that you are displeased with? The liberal viewpoint said, that's anything. They said that's anything, and they used as an excuse, they said as an illustration, for instance, if she goes out in the street, not clad the way she should, if she burns your bread when she's making your bread, you can put her away, and you can put her away. And the only thing that you have to remember, what's the only thing you have to remember? Helen burns my bread in the morning. Make sure I give her the paper. See, make sure I give her the paper. Then the other school said, not so. No, what that's talking about is adultery, fornication. That argument was going on. Now, what Jesus is telling them here is, he's saying, for those of you people that say, if you divorce your wife, give them a writing. I'm telling you, you can't divorce her unless she commits fornication. And so he stops that, nips it in the bud right there. Then he moves on down to the next thing, and he says, 33, again you have heard it said to them of old time, thou shalt not forswear thyself, but shalt perform unto the Lord thine oaths. What does forswear mean? I don't think we use that much. I never hear anybody use it, and I don't use it. But what does forswear mean? What's that? Yeah, but it's actually making an oath that you don't keep. See? That's the idea behind it. It's making an oath that you don't keep. Now, he said, you've heard it said that you're not then to forswear thyself, but you are to perform unto the Lord thine oaths. Now, Moses said quite a lot about oaths. Now, these people here, though, they're saying, now, you're supposed to keep your oath. Then Jesus said, but I say unto you, swear not at all. That's kind of unusual. This is something that, now we're going to spend a little time on this, because this is something that we oftentimes misunderstand. I say, swear not at all, neither by the heaven, for it is the throne of God, nor by the earth, for it's the footstool of his feet, nor by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. Now, as we see, what Jesus is saying here is, he says, but I say unto you, here, swear not at all. Now look at the words I've got in red. In a little while, they're going to become very important words. Don't swear by the heaven, don't swear by the earth, don't swear by Jerusalem, and don't swear by your head. Now, as he goes ahead with that head, don't swear with the head, the next thing he says in here is, he says, neither shalt thou swear with thy head, for thou canst not make one hair white or black. Now, when I swear by my head, or any of these other things, doesn't make any difference what it is, but let's just take my head. When I swear by my head, I swear that I will do this tomorrow. Lowell, you promise? I swear by my head that I will. What does that mean? I've sworn by my head. It can only mean one of two things. Now, when you swear by something, what does that mean? For instance, let's go back. When you put your hand on a Bible in a court, and they say, do you swear to God to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth? So help you God? Now, what's that mean? Why invoke God? What does that mean? Okay, if I don't tell the truth, what I'm saying is, if I don't tell the truth, whose hands am I putting myself in? I'm putting myself in God's hands to do with me as he sees fit. I recognize that God will not tolerate this, and so when I say, so help me God, I'm recognizing there is a being in heaven, and he will hold me guilty if I break that oath. Now, I swear by my head. What does that mean? It can only mean one of two things. It can mean if I break my oath, then I put myself in my head's control. And whatever my head is going to do to me, why, I will accept it. I see a lot of frowns out there. You say, what does that mean? I don't know. It's a big nothing. It's a big nothing. But it either has to mean that, or it means I swear by my head, that is that I now will do something to my head. See? If I'm not telling the truth, I'll do something to my head. So he said, now, don't swear by your head, because how much power do I have over my head? Well, I can't even turn a hair white or black. I have no power over my head, you see, to do that. So he said, don't do that. Now, let's talk a little bit here about the swearing, the way the Jews did it. When Jesus entered the world, remember, he entered a world that the prophets of the Old Testament had never seen. How many years had it been since the Old Testament was closed and Jesus came on the scene? 400 years. In these 400 years, how many things had changed that we saw in our other class? Everything had changed. It turned upside down. Now then, by this time, the Jews were swearing by everything. They were swearing by everything. So much so that one historian said, the Jews go about swearing all day long, and at the end of the day, they swear that they haven't sworn. That's what he said about it. I want you to turn over to Matthew 23, and over here we can see something about how the Jews looked at swearing, what they did. And Jesus is going to give us some more teaching on this very thing. In Matthew 23 and verse 26, woe unto you, you blind guides. Who's he talking about? Those scribes, Pharisees, those hypocrites that is polluting God's teaching. Whosoever shall swear by the temple, it is nothing. But whosoever shall swear by the gold of the temple, he's a debtor. Now here's what they had made up this law. Here's the law. Moses didn't say anything about this. We're going to look and see what Moses said. Moses said, by the way, you can swear, and sometimes you must swear, but it can only be one thing. Guess what that one thing is? When you swear, it must be in the name of God. You must evoke God, because then you are recognizing God. See? If I swear by this table over here, okay, I don't tell the truth, well, that table's going to get me now. No. See, my swearing is just, it's in vain. So you swear by God. Now, here it is. They had made the law, and they said, now, if you swear by the temple, you go out and you say, I swear by the temple that I'll do something, then that's nothing. I don't have to keep that. But if I swear by the gold of the temple, I have to keep that. I have to keep that. Where'd that law come from? Sure didn't come from God. See, it was one of these rabbinical laws that they gave. He said, you fools and blind, for which is greater, the gold or the temple that has sanctified the gold? So now, he said, you fools, when you make that up, which is greater? Is it the gold that is in the temple, or is it the temple that makes the gold great? As you go back and study the Old Testament, what was it that God wanted built? And he talks about it hundreds of times. Was it gold? No. It was a temple. I want this temple. Here's the temple of where it has these two rooms, and what you do this. It's the temple. And now then you put gold in the temple. But the gold becomes sanctified, or it becomes a part of God's service because of the temple, not the other way around. But these people had turned it the other way around. Then he said in verse 18, and whosoever shall swear by the altar, it is nothing. But whosoever shall swear by the gift that's upon it, he's a debtor. So he said, here's another thing you do. Out here you have an altar that you're going to offer to God. So let's suppose that right here's the altar, the table. And here's the gift that I'm giving to God, whether it be a meal offering or an animal offering or whatever it is. Now, here's the altar. Now, I can swear by the altar. I swear by the altar I'll do something. I don't have to do it. But if I swear by the gift that's on the altar, then it's binding and I have to do it. So again, we're going to find, you fools, which is greater, the altar or the gift that's on the altar? It's the altar that is the greater. So these people had just turned this thing around. He said in here, in verse 19, you blind, for which is greater, the gift or the altar that sanctifieth the gift? He therefore that sweareth by the altar sweareth by it, and by all things thereon. He that sweareth by the temple sweareth by it, and all by it, and by him that dwelleth therein. And he that sweareth by the heavens sweareth by the throne of God, and him that sitteth thereon. You can't distinguish these things and swear by these physical things and make up these laws. So the Jewish idea was that they would swear, and for some reason that culture, history tells us, that culture was just swearing by everything. It's like that historian said. It's swearing by everything. Now let's flip back here to what Jesus is saying in Matthew the 5th chapter. He said here in verse 37, but instead of swearing, let your speech be yea, yea, nay, nay, and whatsoever is more than these is of the evil one. Now, when you go about talking and saying people, instead of saying, I swear by the temple I will do this, Just say, I'll do it. You say, Lowell, will you be here tomorrow night? I swear by the gift on the altar that I'll be here tomorrow night. Now, what could I say? Lowell, will you be here tomorrow night? Yes. Now, what does it mean? Let your yes be yes and your no, no. If I say yes, what does that mean? That I'll be here. I'll be here. I don't need to swear I'll be here. If I say yes, I'll be here. In other words, I need to be a man of my word. I need to be a man that when I say something, I do it, and I don't need all of these other things to cause me to do it. And when I get involved in these other things, then I'm of the evil one. I'm going to be now practicing doctrines that have been set up by man and disgracing God. Now let's see how we disgrace God as we do this in here. Here are 3 passages you might read. Somebody turn over there and read it. I didn't bring my Old Testament tonight. Deuteronomy 6:13. If somebody wants to turn to Exodus 22:11, why, fine. Anybody got Deuteronomy 6:13? If you do, start reading. Okay, who is it that you're going to swear by? Only by God, isn't it? See? It's only by God. Now, the reason for this is that when I swear by God, I am recognizing His power. I'm recognizing that I'm putting myself in His hands, and if I don't tell the truth, I'm recognizing He has power over me. It is a glory to God. When I swear by God, I'm recognizing Him. Now, if I swear by Zeus or some idol, now I'm setting that idol up and putting myself under the power of that idol. Now, even though the idol doesn't have any power, I'm setting myself up and acting as though that idol has some power. God said, not so. You swear only by the name of God. That's the only way that you can swear. Anybody got the other one? Mike, you got it there?
An oath before the Lord shall be made by the 2 of them, that he has not laid hands on his neighbor's property, and its owner shall accept it, and he shall not make restitution.
Okay. Now, it's the oath by the Lord, see? We have to take these oaths only in the name of God, see, is where you take them in there. Now, here's the interesting thing. We're going to get back down. You remember, I hope you haven't forgot it, swear not at all, okay? So, swear not at all. Keep that in mind in here. Now, Jesus, when He came, Jesus took an oath. So when He says swear not at all, He didn't mean you can't swear at all. But He meant you can't swear by anything other than by God, as we'll see in a moment. In Matthew chapter 26 and verse 63, here we have Jesus standing before the Supreme Court here, and the question is asked Him here in verse 63. Here it is, the high priest stood up and said, blah, blah, blah. But Jesus held His peace. And the high priest said unto him, I adjure thee by the living God, that thou tell us whether thou art the Christ, the Son of God. Now, what does that mean when the high priest said, I adjure you by the living God? What does that mean? I'm putting you under oath. I'm putting you under oath. Now, so I'm putting you under oath by God. You tell us whether you're the Christ. Now, Jesus didn't say, sorry, sir, I can't swear. I can't swear under oath. He didn't say that. What did He say? He answered him, didn't He? Yeah. See, He answered him. So Jesus when he was put under oath, he answered that. So Jesus answered under oath. But here's another interesting thing that we've got in here. That there are several passages in the New Testament where oaths are taken. In Romans 1, verse 9, why we find Paul makes a statement, and I'm just going to read it to you here to show where you can see how oaths were given. Now, what we think of as an oath is that you always put your hand on the Bible, right? And another guy's standing in front of you, and you put your hand on the Bible, and then they say that one phrase. That's not how oaths were given before we started that here in America, see. It's like the high priest just said, I'm putting you under oath, and you're going to answer this. Now, down here in verse 9, Paul said, for God is my witness. He's putting himself under oath. God is my witness. If I tell you a lie, God knows it. I'm accepting God as my witness. That is an expression that they used for putting themselves under oath. You find it in other places, but I want to go quickly to 1 Thessalonians 5. The rest of those are about the same thing. In 1 Thessalonians 5:27, here is Paul writing to the Thessalonian brethren, and he says, I adjure you. What does that mean? I adjure you. I put you under oath. That's what that word means. Now, I'm sending this letter to you, and I'm putting you under oath by the temple, the gift, or what? By the Lord, see? I put you under oath by the Lord that this epistle be read unto all the brethren. So when you accept this epistle, he said, I'm putting you under oath upon your acceptance of it, that it be read unto the brethren. What would have happened if the guy that received the epistle, I don't know who it was, but whoever it was that received the epistle, decided he would just keep it and he wouldn't read it to the church? He would be breaking his oath. See? He'd be breaking an oath to the Lord. Now, all that I'm getting at is that Jesus swore to an oath. The Apostle Paul put them under an oath. The Apostle Paul took oaths. And you say, well, how can you reconcile this? Not at all. We're coming to that in a minute. He said, how can you reconcile this? And when we understand there is only one oath that is justified here. Now, in this, let's look at James chapter 5, verse 12. And notice what James says. Here we kind of find our secret unveiled. But above all things, my brethren, swear not. Pretty clear. Swear not. Neither by heaven, nor by the earth, nor by any other oath. But let your yea be yea, and your nay, nay, that you fall not under judgment. Now that word, other, in the Greek, means of the same kind. The Greeks have two words. One of them is heteros. We probably know what that means, don't we? Heterosexual. So what would heteros mean? Others of different kinds. See, a different kind, male and female. So it's something of a different kind. Now, this word is allos, which means other of the same kind. So if I were, we were having an animal show in here, and so somebody brings a dog up and they put it in here. And so somebody else brings a dog up and they put it in here. And so I then say, okay, now, do you have any other animals? And I use the word allos. What would that mean? Any other of the same kind. You say, no, that's all the dogs we got. Well, have you got any heteros? That's the word for other. But what does that mean? You have any other pets of a different kind? Yeah, we got a horse and a cow. See? Now, up here, James is saying, don't swear by these things, heaven or earth or any other of the same kind of oath. See? Now, with this in mind, go back up to what Jesus said there here in the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5. But I say unto you, swear not at all. Now, the law he was living under said, you swear by the name of God. He himself swore by the name of God. And Paul swore by the name of God. So, swear not at all. What does that mean? It means not at all by these things here, neither by the heaven. That explains it. Don't swear at all by such things as the heaven or the earth or Jerusalem or your head. Don't swear by at all by anything except what? One thing. Just accept God. See? So Jesus is putting the teeth then in the swearing and telling them that's where you need to swear. Is swear exactly the way you are taught and authorized to swear, and that elevates the great God of heaven then. Now, he goes ahead to the next thing here then. He said, now, you've heard it said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Well, you ever read that in the Old Testament? Sure do, don't you? Eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth. He said, now, you've heard it said that, but I say unto you, and I'm going to tell you something. Now, he's either saying Moses was wrong, or he's saying other people use this in the wrong way. And that's what he's saying. Now, Moses never did say, if you punch out my eye, I can punch out your eye. You know that? When he said an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth? Never. Never did he say, if you punch out my tooth, I can punch out your tooth. That's generally the way it's taught, but we'll see, that's not what he said. Now, this is what these people were teaching. See, the people were teaching that Moses said an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, and so if you knock out my eye, I'll knock out your eye. You knock out my tooth, I'll knock out your tooth. You don't fool around with old Lowell, because I'll get you back. I'll do unto you like you've done unto me. I'll take care of you. See? What's the word for that? Vengeance. When I set this thing right, that is in here. Now, here's what Moses said. He said, if men strive together and hurt a woman with child so that her fruit depart, and yet no harm follow, that is, she has the baby, but it doesn't die, he shall surely be fined, according to the woman's husband shall lay upon him, and he shall pay as the judges determine. But if any harm follow, then thou shalt give life for life, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burning for burning, wound for wound, stripe for stripe. And he goes ahead and says, and you are not to show pity. He's talking to judges. This law was given to the courts. It was never given to a Jew that you knock my tooth out, I knock your tooth out. This was given that if you harm me, I can take you to a judge, and now then the judges have certain stipulations, and God made the stipulations. He didn't leave it free for the judge to say, well, were you spanked when you were a kid? Did it harm you? Were you emotionally upset? And so that's probably given you a warped personality, and so I see why you knocked somebody's eye out. No. No. If somebody does something, it's taken before a judge, then God said the law is you give the punishment the way the punishment deserves to be given. A tooth for a tooth and so forth in that statement. So Jesus said, so I say unto you then, so this down here is a misuse of it, I say unto you, resist not him that is evil. But whosoever smiteth thee on thy right cheek, turn to him the other also. And if a man would go to law with thee and take away thy coat, let him have thy cloak also. And whosoever shall compel thee to go 1 mile, go with him 2. Give to him that asketh, and to him that would borrow from you, turn not away. Now, if we take this out of the context, we can misuse and misunderstand what Jesus is teaching in here. He said, now, Now here's what I say to you. Don't resist him that is evil. Don't, you see, what they said, you got to understand what he's talking about. These people said, if somebody knocks my eye out, what can I do to them? I knock their eye out. Lee comes up and slaps me on the cheek. What do I do to him? Pop, slap him on the cheek. He hits me twice. What can I do to him? I hit him twice. Now he said, no, that belongs to the courts. Here's what you do. Don't you resist him that's evil. But whosoever smiteth thee on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. Now, this obviously is teaching that you go beyond what is really required in here. It's kind of interesting, and I don't know whether this is true or not, but customs, you have to take customs into play and so forth, but I just don't know whether this is a custom. I've heard it said that it is by people that should know, but I haven't read it. If I go up and hit Mike on the right cheek, I walk up to him to hit him on the right cheek, how do I have to hit him? Look at the way we are now. How do I have to hit him if I'm going to hit him on the right cheek? With the back of my hand, don't I? I hit him with the back of my hand. Now, they say that was an insult. That was an insult of the worst dignity. It's kind of like a kid. You know, instead of me saying, Mike, stand up and fight like a man, I just walk up to him and you little brat, you. And it's just an insult to get hit like that. Well, when I give him that insult, what should be his response? This horrible, it's almost like spitting in his face. Hit him like this. See? Just, then, if you want to come back this way, that's where you really hit. See? That's where you really. One, you get an insult, and the other, you get that. Don't fight it. Don't fight it. If a man would take thee to law, take away your coat, I think this is obviously if you know that you're in the wrong. I tell you one thing I'm not going to do. If some of you come up to my house tomorrow and say, Lowell, I decided I'm taking you to law and I want your house. Do you want to sign it over? Because what Jesus said is, if I'm going to take you to law, what should I do? I want your house. So what should I do? We'll give you my house and my car too, you see, or something in there. No, he's not saying that. Paul stood up in the courts and said, you don't have a right to do this, and so forth. That would be an unrighteous thing. The Lord isn't activating unrighteousness. Anybody who wants anything that a Christian has, all they have to do is say, I want to take you to court, and you say, okay, here it is. But if you know that you're in the wrong, what's the thing that you ought to do? Don't fight it. Don't fight it. Don't be a troublemaker. Don't be antagonistic. Somebody compelled you to go 1 mile? By the way, who had the right to compel you to go a mile? Who had the right to walk up to you and say, Ryan, here's my bag. You're going to carry it for a mile. Romans. Roman soldiers. They could take their packs. They could take whatever it is. They could take any man off the street. Hey, here, bing. And they could compel him to go a certain distance, which is called a mile. Okay? I tell Ryan, this soldier, by the way, how would that make you feel? The soldier just picks you up, Ryan, and says, you're going to carry my pack for the next mile. Would it irritate you just a little bit, like it would me? Yeah. So what should your attitude be? When you get the mile, you drop it and say, that's it, buddy. That's as far as you can make me go. If you make me go any farther, I will. Well, he'll probably club you over the head and say, let's see what you'll do in there. But what he says is, go at him too. In other words, don't be overbearing. Don't be a troublemaker. Don't fight it. And if somebody would borrow thee, turn not thou away. Now, I was thinking today. Today, I'm a poor man. Tomorrow, I will be a rich man. And you know what I'm going to do? As you guys go out tonight, I'm going to stand at the door, and I'm going to borrow off every one of you. I'm going to ask you for the money that you've got. What does this say you're supposed to do to me? Give it to me. So right now, I'm asking. I'll be at the door with my hand out. This is not the only time. Every time we come to service, I'm going to do this thing in there. You suppose that's what he's talking about? I never have to work again. Never have to work again in there. No, that's not what he's talking about in here. Let's look at Paul made a statement in 2 Thessalonians chapter 3 and verse 10. What was the statement that he made over there? 2 Thessalonians 3:10. Talking about me. The guy doesn't want to work. I want to live off of you. I want to borrow your money. Okay. This says for you to treat me how? If I don't work, then neither let him eat. Let me starve to death while I'm begging you for money. if I won't work. Well, then when you put two and two together, what kind of guy is it that you're supposed to help? I come to you and ask you for money, and you need to loan me money. Under what circumstances? It's when I need it. I work, but I broke my leg. I can't work, or something of this nature. It's a legitimate need, is what he's saying. So don't ever turn away a legitimate need. But his teaching is not that you can just go ahead and do this and cause people to sin, not work, and do all of these various things here. Okay, 43 is where we stop. Here's we're getting into a big one now, and it's a small word, but spells easy, L-O-V-E, but he's going now to lay upon us a burden of the kind of people that we need to be. Now remember, he's preparing these people. What's he preparing them for? Changing their ways, changing their minds, changing their lives, so they'll be prepared to step into the kingdom of God. Okay, there's where we close tonight.